Marriage, marriage, marriage. Marriage is what brings us together today. Marriage, that blessed arrangement, that dream within a dream. Marriage. Marriage is obviously a huge deal in every culture for every person who chooses to go through it. For a lot of people who choose not to, it's a big deal. It should be celebrated, it should be feared, it should be talked about, it should be joked about, and it should be written about in music, of course. Today's song on Bubba Shot the Podcast does discuss marriage, but discusses marriage between two very young people, which is how we do it in the South. So it's Trisha Yearwood Day on Bubba Shot the Podcast. We're doing She's in Love with the Boy, and we're going to get right into it. Getting married young. How about it? Did y'all do it? Did you want to? Was it just an excuse so you could get some sex in without feeling guilty because of Jesus? Did you not do it because you saw what it did to your parents who got married at 17, fell out of love at 28, and got a divorce at 47? Let us know.
Bubba Shot the Podcast, and that's right, a show about country at a time.
This is Bubba Shot the Podcast. First, let's do the facts. She's in Love with the Boy by Trisha Yearwood was written by John Ems. John Ems is a folk singer. He's only ever got 2 songs that have ever charted, so he seems to be an indie musician himself who just happened to sell this song. It was on her self-titled debut album in 1991. It went to number 1 on the Billboard U.S. Hot Country Singles charts. It was the first of 5 number 1s for Yearwood. Now, Yearwood ended up obviously becoming a superstar. In that 90s, especially early 90s situation there, you got to remember this is pre-Shania. There were obviously a lot of women in country, but to come out of the gates with a number 1 was a pretty big deal back then. She did it with a great song. We're going to get into it today. We are joined, as always, by Trey Crowder and the Indian Outlaw. We are missing our Cho, so bear with us that we're Choless.
Choless, yeah, he's doing some presumably very white and southern thing because he said he had like family obligations in Chickamauga, so some sort of
mission trip
dinner at a plantation or something like that.
No, I think he had to go to the abortion clinic.
No. Yeah, we don't know what he's doing. It's something like that, though. Yeah, it's some sort of family deal. So here we are, Choless for the first time in Bubba history, but it's okay. We will persist.
Persistent we are, and obviously that means we're starting with the Indian Outlaw, not bringing him in halfway through the middle. I'm going to go to you immediately. We got you here. Let's use our Indian. I want to talk about this video. Have you watched it yet?
I watched the video, yeah.
It's funny to think of what nostalgia was in a time that I am somewhat nostalgic for. The video was nostalgic when it was made, if that makes sense. What did you think of it?
I thought it was really, just like the song, it was a reflection of a very sweet sentiment of, I love this dude, and it don't matter what anyone says about him, I'm with him. And so it's such a simple song that the video didn't even need to be nostalgic. I thought it was just a powerful, simple video.
I did not watch the video because this song, this is probably a top 5 90s country song for me. This is one of my all-time favorites. So I felt like I didn't need to do any sort of research. I could recite the whole thing verbatim right now if I wanted to. So I didn't go and re-listen to it or nothing, because I probably listened to it at least once or twice a week on average still to this day. I've listened to it this week for sure because it is so sweet. But also it's always really a hit for me because even though I'm not every girlfriend I ever had, I always thought I probably did not hit for her parents, but for different reasons than Tommy in the song. In the song, he's like, that boy's a dumbass with no prospects. But with me, it was like, that boy's a queer with the wrong prospects, or whatever. To be fair to all of these past, would-be in-laws, girlfriends, families and stuff, they were always pleasant enough to me in person, but I definitely always thought that. So, and I think that's part of why I always like this song so much. And my current wife, her name is Katie, although I'm not Tommy, but it's a very sweet song for me. I've always been a huge fan of it.
Well, let's get into those lyrics then, since we're starting with the story, and we'll come back to the video later. Katie's sitting on her old front porch watching the chickens peck the ground. There ain't a whole lot going on tonight in this one-horse town. Over yonder, coming up the road in a beat-up Chevy truck, is her boyfriend Tommy laying on the horn, splashing through the mud and the muck. Now we're right to the chorus. Her daddy says he ain't worth a lick. When it comes to brains, he got the short end of the stick. But Katie's young, and man, she just don't care. She'd follow Tommy anywhere. She's in love with the boy. She's in love with the boy. She's in love with the boy. And even if they have to run away, she's going to marry that boy someday.
So, just a quick aside, sort of in line with what I was just talking about, that last line you read, even if they have to run away, she's going to marry that boy someday. I don't know if I've ever told you all this, but when me and Katie had just started dating, one of the first, maybe the first trip we ever took together was to Tunica, Mississippi, to go to the casinos with her sister and her sister's then boyfriend, now husband. So it's the first time I met her older sister, and we ate at the casino buffet at one point, and I was of course doing my buffet thing, so I had a whole bunch of the hits piled up on my plate,
Contracting
as
diabetes.
You do. And we were sitting at the table shortly after that, and Katie took her fork and reached over to my plate, and I swatted it away, and with my mouth full of shrimp or whatever, I said, "Don't touch my meat pile," very matter of factly like that. And she was like, "Okay, fine." And anyway, that is what it is. But I found out later that her sister, and I think this is so funny, her sister told their mama that story that I just told y'all when she got back from the trip and said, "Mama, Katie's going to marry that boy someday." Based off of "Don't touch my meat pile." I don't know what that, why that triggered that response in her, but I've always thought that was
you were comfortable enough
hilarious.
to be you, and she was okay with it, maybe?
Yeah, I guess so. Yes.
What was her reaction? Do you remember her reaction? Like, "Oh, sorry."
Her mom's? Oh,
no, Katie's.
No, she laughed about it. She was like, "Sorry." Yeah. But not in a "Oh, Jesus, sorry." She just giggled and was like, "Yeah, my bad." Because it was, kind of patently ridiculous.
Don't touch that man's meat pile
all the time.
Dad gets the biggest piece of chicken, even if he ain't dad yet.
Yeah, it's my meat pile. She could have made her own meat pile if she wanted a meat pile. We're at a buffet. That's how they operate. It's that we talked about on the wellRED podcast, but it's like that that Kevin Hart bit. I think about it all the time. Sip of my goddamn juice. It's like Katie always trying to get a sip of my goddamn juice, and it started way back then on our first ever trip. So anyway, yeah.
That's such a Homer Simpson.
Yeah, I know. It's like
it's perfectly
not,
American.
Right. It ends with her sister being like, "Mama, she's going to marry that boy someday." But it's so fat and stupid of it. It's not romantic. It's not. You wouldn't see that in a rom-com, I don't think. As a meet cute type of situation. Meet cute. You get meat pile cute. Am I right? But anyway, yeah.
You got it.
Sorry to derail it. You just made me think of that.
Now we're in it. Is he freezing for you, Trey?
Yeah. Too sharp, buddy.
Too sharp. We'll come back to you if you can hear us when you're ready.
Frozen up right now.
You're frozen, and you sound like a remix of a terrible country song about a meat pile. Well, getting back to the lyrics while we wait on him. Obviously, you've got a lot of setting up here. You've got a young lady in her hometown. There's nothing going on. Her boyfriend comes up. He's splashing through mud and muck, and her dad's just immediately like, "Screw this guy." But Katie don't care. And even if she has to run away, she's going to marry him. Now, I think that part's one of the more revealing parts early on in this song to me. And I do think it's a really sweet, precious song, and I do love it. But if we're gonna pick out, as we often do, usually Too Sharp's playing this role, but he's frozen right now. If we're gonna pick out this is from a different time, Why do they have to run away? Is that because they're not 18? Or is it because even at 19, her dad is allowed to tell her what to do?
I mean, I feel like it's the latter. That's how I always sort of interpreted it. Like, I feel like that's oftentimes why young people elope, is because they don't have the approval of their parents or families or whatever. So that's how I always interpreted that line. Even if they ain't down with it, and as such, she has to run away. Well, that's what she's going to do, and she's then going to marry that boy someday. Tushar, I don't know if this will help. If you can hear me, like, maybe you or leave and come back or something, because you're still pretty frozen up, and maybe we can get it worked out. I can kind of hear you, but you sound like a robot or something, and I can't really make out what you're saying. And the picture looks real bad too. So,
okay, hold on.
Yeah.
As he does that, we will welcome him back with open arms. I agree with you. I've always interpreted it that way. And also, I think adding to that for me is you can't really get married in your hometown if your parents don't bless it. And not because like people won't let you. Where would you do it at? Like you if you live in the kind of towns we grew up in, and this is called a one-horse town, and the video makes it look as small as where we grew up, you kind of have to to go to a chapel and just get somebody to do it. You'd either have to go to the courthouse, I guess you could do it that way, or you'd have to go to Gatlinburg, which is kind of running away.
Yeah, for sure it is. I know we're talking about the lyrics right now, but the dude, I hadn't looked up who wrote this, and it was a dude. Do you know, having done the sort of research you've done for the past episodes and stuff, like, were there big women songwriters in 90s country? It's like most of these artists didn't write their own songs, and so far, even ones like this one were written by a man.
I haven't
Fancy,
ran into
a notable
them
exception,
yet.
Obviously, but
yeah,
I'm just wondering if there were.
Fancy's a notable exception for it, and then the person who wrote it was a performer herself. I haven't ran into them. I've only ever done research related to, for the most part, whatever songs we're doing. Now, I've gone down a few rabbit holes here and there, but not even a partner. A few of our songs have been written by 2 or even 4 people, I think one of them, and we haven't run into a single lady songwriter, and I have to assume that's because the inside of that industry is even more of a boys' club than the performance side.
I'm back. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. It actually sounds really good.
Hell yeah. I did want to say about the first couple verses, my favorite part was, and I wish they did this in the video, but they didn't, but when her boyfriend Tommy's laying on the horn, splashing through the mud and the muck. I love if you want to paint a boy as an all-American Southern country boy, part of the whole thing is to ride through the mud and the muck and just have a good time. And that was my first experience, like, hanging out with my high school buddies who took me mudding one time. So I love how, like, the song kind of pays homage and kind of references that.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because that's a trope that has now been beat into the fucking muddy ground by pop country. And it's wild that this song sort of alludes to it early on in the 90s, but the video doesn't, because now even a song that don't even have a reference to it, I guarantee you the music video is going to have a truck going through a mud hole that's going to close up on it and then right back to a girl in Daisy Dukes.
Did it hit for you too, Shar, the act of mudding? I mean, because we used to do that too. I never had the truck for it, but I had buddies who did, and certainly went with them. And it was a good time.
I never really understood it, because in high school, all my buddies they would spend all their free time and extra money that they earn at whatever jobs they have to lift their truck and get big tires. And I always wonder, like, oh, that looks cool. But not until mudding did I realize, like, that is the purpose of it. You wait for a big rain, and the next day you go. And the first time it was like 7 trucks, and they picked me up, and we went. And I remember there was this huge. There's a driveway, but there's like two kind of paths. But between the paths, there was just pretty much should be like a stream. But it rained so hard, it was probably waist deep or maybe higher, and you couldn't tell. And the car that I was in, or the truck that I was in, the guy was just like, fuck it, let's do it. And he just drove right through it.
Yeah.
and the car died right in the middle. I mean, the thing
Yeah.
was a good 10
Sucked
feet.
water into it.
Soak water into it, and he had water was starting to come into the sides, and Brandon, the guy who was in the front seat, he was like, "I'll go get help," and he just jumps out the window onto the hood, jumps onto the thing, and just runs away. And we're just sitting there with the water slowly coming in, and the driver
Shit.
Matt's having a good time. He's like, "Oh, we'll figure this out," and then it got winched out, and it was like. It was such a thrilling, fun thing to do, but so stupid. Like, what?
Were you drinking?
Thing. Yeah, everyone was drinking. I didn't
Yeah,
drink
I
in high
mean,
school, but they're all drinking. Yeah,
You didn't drink.
I didn't drink, so
That's
I
a
was
big
just
part of
sober.
why you didn't. Yeah, that's a big part of why you didn't have as much fun. Number one. Number two, it sounds like y'all got into an actual stream instead of mud.
Yeah, for sure.
It's funny the name was Brandon because my guy who I would always ride with, it would be Austin and Brandon. Brandon had an array of cars over the years, some better than others, but sometimes it was like half the challenge. He had a Subaru Brat that was all-wheel drive, but that's a car. It was about 10 inches off the ground, so it wasn't clearing anything, but he'd go through there. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard a full-on paragraph of expletives and technical terms that I didn't understand a single fucking word of. Goddamn some bitch got water up in the manifold. It's backed up in there, and the carburetor's all fucking shot. And I fixed this son of a bitch last week. The guy down there told me, and I'm just like, okay, we're all mad. We're mad together. Fuck that guy, Bill, down there at Napa, lied to you.
I had a buddy who was like a year older than us and went off to the Army, as you do, and then would come home and always just blow through whatever Army money he had in the dumbest ways. You know, I can remember one time he knocked on my when I got to college, I was like 19. He was home on leave once and knocked on my apartment door, and I opened it, and he was standing there holding a big green kayak that he had just bought for like $350 at a gas station in Cookeville, Tennessee, when he just stopped to get gas, and they had a kayak for sale, and he was like, "Check this out, got a kayak," and he just like threw it down in my living room floor, and that's where it stayed for the weekend. He did end up using it later, but anyway, on the mudding front, he went mudding in a rental car once.
Fuck yes.
And it was like one of those little like small SUVs, like some kind of Isuzu or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but like not any kind of big body, you know, and certainly wasn't lifted and it didn't have mud tires on it or none of that. It was a fucking rental car. And he tore that thing to hell, dude. And he got sued, I believe, by the rental car company.
Of course.
Like that didn't hit for them.
He was going to quit the Army, and then he got that lawsuit. God damn, guess I got to go back in here and murder some more people.
But that was a good time.
I had a silver Jeep Cherokee 4-wheel drive. We would take mudding. My friend Austin, who you guys remember him from a minute ago from the Brat story, he had one of those rad Broncos. I think it was a 68. He sold it to one of our teachers who married a former student. They was dating when she was in high school for $3,000. Yeah, and they're still married. He sold it for she's in love with the boy. She was 18, plus she had a fat ass, dude. I mean, I will say that. You know what I mean? But anyway, he was 22. She was 18. What are you going to do? There's like 8 people in my town.
Okay, he was a 22-year-old teacher, and she was
23.
Like,
okay,
that's certainly different.
It was problematic, but not like the most disgusting thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, okay.
That would be the other coach, Chip, who was fucking a 16-year-old, and he was 40, and he's dead now. OD'd on meth.
So there you go. Yeah, you'll have that.
Jason bought Austin's orange 68 Bronco for $3,000. It was about 5 years later that particular market and the internet and hobbyism made those vehicles $10,000, no matter what shape they were in, 20 if they ran like Austin's. So he fucked one student and fucked another one a different way. Way to go, Jason. Let's get back to it. Shout out to Jason. Katie and Tommy are at the drive-in movie, parked in the very last row. They're too busy holding on to one another to even care about the show. Later on, outside the Tasty Freeze, Tommy slips something on her hand. He says, "My high school ring will have to do till I can buy a wedding band." And then we're back to the chorus. Her daddy says he ain't worth a lick. When it comes to brains, he's got the short end of the stick, but she's young and she don't care, and she'd follow Tommy anywhere because she's in love with the boy.
You know what's nice about this song is that it's very universal in the sense that, for example, from my culture, like every 80s, or actually take time out of it, it's like, this is the struggle for every single one. I want to be with this person. My parents or someone in society is against it, and I'm going to fight it. And it's kind of a universal theme. And this is
Love
probably the
finds a way.
most simple way to put it. Like, there's not much more that she's either building a case for him or against him. She's just like, I just love him. I don't give a shit what is happening, what everyone else says. And that's the kind of beauty and the simplicity of the song, I think.
Well, one thing I wanted to bring up in talking about this song is, again, it's one of my all-time favorites. I love it, and it is very sweet, and it is a universal tale and all that. But like, as an adult, this song came out when I was a kid, and I loved it all through high school. And I already told you how I felt like I related to it in that certain way or whatever when I was younger. But now, as an adult, and somebody who has children, although mine are not old enough for any of that yet. Like, these are like 17-year-olds. You know what I mean? It's like, they probably ought not be getting married.
That's right.
Like, no, getting the
That's
fucking,
right.
getting the promise ring thing. Like, I remember that was a big thing in high school. I bought a girl a promise ring one time.
Too.
Well, we've talked about this before.
It's the only way you can get her to touch it, son.
Well, apparently there's two different kinds of promise rings or something, and one of them is like Jesus-y in nature. That's not
Yeah. There's like, the girls have to get a promise ring from their dad and promise not to have sex with anybody. But then you give a girl a promise ring and say you're going to promise to marry her, and that's how you overcome that bullshit so you can come.
Get her to bust it open. Yeah, sure. But
I mean, that's all it is. That's all that's happening here. I don't care what anybody says. She may be in love with that boy, but purity culture creates young marriages. I mean, that's a fact.
Yeah, no doubt. And a lot of them don't end up hitting. You know what I mean?
No.
I worked with a guy, my summertime job, my last couple years of high school and first year of college in Salina, was working for the Clay County Highway Department. And I worked with an old boy down there that'd been there for a long time. And he was like, it's so funny, dude. In retrospect, I guess he was like my age now, looking back on it. I think he was in his like mid-30s. But at the time, I was like, this old ass motherfucker here, and he had met his wife. They met at like 16 or something like that. And they got married before they turned 18. And it was a huge deal and everybody hated it or whatever. And at the time I knew him, they'd been together 20 years and had 3 kids or whatever, and were going strong and all that. But I feel like they are the exception. Most of them relationships don't end up hitting. So it's like Katie's dad, he's making some good points in this song. You know what I mean?
This is extremely rude of me, but I don't think your buddy was the exception. You were just too young for him to tell you the truth about his life.
Well, they may have split up now. I don't know, but
Well, whether they split up or not, I think that attached to the purity culture is also this like shame built around divorce. I think a lot of people are just like, well, we stayed together till our kids were raised. What the fuck am I going to do now? You know what I mean? I'm 50, I'm 70 pounds overweight, and I live in a town with 89 people in it. This is my guy. Unless he beats me or gives me a disease, this is my guy, and that's my gal.
It's a supply and demand thing. And yeah, this basically comes down to the first 3 lines of the song where she's like, I'm bored as shit on this couch, on this front porch, and I literally have nothing going on. And this guy showing up is going to finger me in a truck, and that's more exciting than whatever else I can get going.
Hell yeah, buddy.
Now, I guess we can get on to it. We're moving pretty quickly, although we can go back to the video. The last verse is, to me, it's not unassailable, but it goes against some of our cynicism and negativity. And it is, to me, what makes this song as a song better than many other fall in love and it's sweet songs. And I mean, let's just get right into it. Her daddy's waiting up till 12:30 when they come sneaking up the walk. He says, young lady, get on up to your room while me and Junior have a talk. Now, before we get to this turn, I'm glad that we have another thing to stop and focus on. I'm back to their 16 or 17, man.
Yeah.
Too sure you had froze, and we had talked about them like maybe being 18 or 19 and they were going to run away, but it's because you have to run away in those situations because you got to go somewhere to get married. But now I think they're 16, 17.
I don't think those are mutually exclusive. When I said earlier, it's like when I think the line, even if she has to run away, I think it means like because her family won't be down with it. I still stand by that. But also I always interpret it. They're high schoolers. They're like 16, 17, probably.
He says my high school ring will have to do, which means
Yeah.
you get a high school ring, what, junior year earliest? Or do you get it
I don't
freshman?
know. That's a good point.
You don't get it freshman, but
You get it
may
senior,
get it
I
junior,
thought.
you may get it
Yeah.
senior. Probably
Maybe it is
senior.
senior year. So they're seniors. Or he, you know, like
At least
as is
he's
often
senior.
the case.
Yeah.
As is often the case, she could be like 16 or 17. He could be like 21. You
Yeah,
know?
he could be a
He's been
teacher.
out of-
I mean, you guys heard my story.
Yeah, well, dude, that was a huge thing in my town. I'm sure yours too, Drew. It's like, you know, the Wooderson character from Dazed and Confused, you know, that guy. We were eat up with those guys, man. The guys that were hot shit in high school and were still hanging around town and doing all the same shit the high school kids did, even though they were now, you know, again, looking back, they were 21, 22. It's not like they were 30, but still, they've been out of high school for 3 or 4 years and they were still hanging around doing all the same high school shit. And oftentimes, the hitting high school girls were dating those dudes, you know, as opposed to the guys in our grade or whatever.
I got dumped
so it could be
in
like
8th grade. The hottest girl in 8th grade dumped me in 8th grade for a junior at a different school. So it'd be happening for sure. They're not doing great.
I never realized how much that happened in my years of dating, where like a 28-year-old will end up with a 40 or 38-year-old, like a decade older, and that person obviously has their relative shit together compared to someone your own age. So the dating
That's more
pool,
fair.
yeah, seems fair.
Because it was such a thing in Salina. No one ever thought anything about it. And again, now as an adult, in retrospect, looking back on it, I'm like, that was at least a little bit creepy and weird and whatever. These like dudes in their 20s fucking with 16-year-olds or whatever. But it was just a massive part of the culture that no one ever thought anything about.
The reverse happened too. I will say that the class 2 years ahead of me, I think I was a sophomore when they graduated, or a freshman. A lot of hot cheerleaders, like an abnormal amount for a school our size in that grade. And as the older dudes left or went off to college and they didn't have as many in their grade, they started coming down to the old freshman side of the hallway.
Yeah, see, we didn't really have that. The reverse never really happened in Salina that I can remember. It was always the one direction.
Dude, this one girl, I won't say the name, she was dating my cousin who was graduated, pulled me into a closet and was like, let's make out. And no more comments. It was a good time.
Yeah, that is.
Well, anyway, I didn't realize, Trey, I thought earlier you were making the case that these are probably people out of high school. And I was like, yeah, I could see that, because just because they have to run away doesn't mean they're not out of high school. But now the way he talks to her and Junior, I think that's probably high school kids or I graduated. And it's like, well, you ain't moved out, so you're under my roof, girl.
Yeah. I'm with you.
All right, let's get to that turn we were talking about. He says, young lady, get on up to your room. Me and Junior have a talk. Mama breaks in, says, don't lose your temper. It wasn't very long ago when you yourself was just a hayseed plowboy who didn't have a row to hoe. My daddy said you wasn't worth a lick. When it comes to brains, you got the short end of the stick. Yeah, Dad, you fucking dumbass. But he was wrong, and honey, you are too. Katie looks at Tommy like I still look at you. She's in love with the boy. She's in love with the boy. What's meant to be will always find a way. She's going to marry that boy someday. Oh.
Yeah, no, I love this. I love this last verse, because it's like, again, we were saying earlier, like as an adult thinking back on this shit, it's like, yeah, they don't even get married. I'd have my reservations too. But you also, I think, have to remember that, like, you also did all that same type of shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, again, I bought a girl a promise ring, all that stuff. It's like, it's kind of just part of it. Just pray they don't get pregnant, baby. But like, trying to fight back against it the way her daddy is just going to make her get pregnant and run off and get married or whatnot. So, mama's stepping in and setting him straight, as it were. And yeah, it hits for me.
Tushar? No, it hits for me too. It's my favorite part of the song. I'm sure it's most people's favorite part of the song. It's like I said, I think it's what sets it apart from other regular sweet songs. I will say, though, getting back to purity culture and young people getting married and all that, there is something kind of wild, going back to what you said about Daddy being right. It's true that if Dad comes down too hard on these kids, they're going to run off and get married and get pregnant. But at the same time, Mama's just being like, hey, it worked out for us. This thing that works
Yeah.
out for almost nobody somehow
Right.
worked out for us. So let them do it.
Yeah, I do agree with you about that. The fact, like, I love the line, Katie looks at Tommy like I still look at you. It's very sweet, but you are right that she's like, yeah, what you just said. It's like, listen, it worked out for us, so hell, it'll be fine, which is like, it still don't make it fine. Fucking a hot and heavy puppy love relationship like that is totally fine. But the dad definitely has some, some justified reservations about the idea of them running off and getting married or whatever, despite what Mama says.
Ultimately, this song is about bitches, but from
Yes.
the bitches' POV. And
Yeah.
and thus so much more sweeter.
Yes, of course. Bitches be
Now, I
sweet.
can't remember. Did we start just throwing that word out because we were trying to say that 90s country is a lot like rap, or are we just
Are we not allowed to bleep me out?
Oh, you can say whatever you want. I'm just trying to remember. I feel like it's an inside joke, but maybe it's not. Maybe we're just saying bitches left and right.
No,
Yeah.
always, he's got a theme running so far where he sort of tallies up the degree to which bitches factor into the story.
Well, no, listen, no.
It is the rap thing. It's like,
no,
admit that it's right about it.
In this song, it's uncalled for. It's a little rude. I'm sorry, listeners. This is a sweet song, but all of the other songs that are written by men, sang by men, they all seem to have some element. They imply that I'm a player and I'm gonna get me some bitches, and this is the song about it.
And if something goes wrong, it's in bitches' fault.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I definitely interpreted every one of Tushar's usages of the term to be intended in the rap fashion. After the rap fashion,
with respect.
I'm going to be honest.
I'll do respect.
This is why I asked. Well, we got a lot of time to kill, and there is something I want to talk about. Now, Tushar, I think I'm going to have to give some exposition to explain to you, and probably some listeners. Some others might be familiar with this, but this is an interesting thing. Trisha Yearwood was one of the first women to cross over. Crossover refers to, your success in multiple types of music. So in 1997, she had a song crossover because of the film Con Air. The name of that song was How Do I Live? Perhaps we will do it on this podcast. Because of that, it does slap. Because of that, Trisha Yearwood became one of the earliest, wait a minute, these bitches can do country music and pop music. As we know, and we follow the history of country music, country eventually follows pop. It does it like 5 to a decade later. She was kind of riding that train. Again, this is pre the Chicks. This is pre Shania Twain. So it was a big deal. As her career is starting to take off, she's blowing up. She is a superstar in pretty much every sense of that word. She gets divorced and establishes a romantic relationship with arguably the biggest star of the time, probably inarguably, Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks and she start this relationship. She has a 4-year hiatus where she just starts a new family. And I remember at the time, even inside the world of country music, where, calling them bitches and there's no female songwriters to speak of, as Trey has pointed out, and they don't get radio play unless they play by the men's rules. Even inside that fucked up world, there was one of those huge kind of classic, I think it's third versus fourth wave feminism debates, but I may be getting my waves wrong, of like, she's a woman, she's allowed to do what she wants, versus you're giving up your career for a man. You've got a new man who wants you to stay at home and be with the kids. And I just remember, even as a young man, finding it all wildly interesting, watching women, argue about that, listening to the women argue about that. Care to comment, Indian Outlaw?
I mean, it's interesting. I guess it's just interesting that love, I guess, gets super complicated the older you get in some ways. And that is just the opposite of this song. It's like the beginning point. It's like the first time you fell in love and like nothing matters. And as you get older and love stacks up and problems stack up, that this thing becomes almost something that is, she has other considerations. So I don't know, but it's interesting to know that like I was about to ask how female country singers. They're like, I know Dolly Parton, a few, Shania Twain are probably a few of the kind of outliers in certain situations, but just like any other artist, most of them, I would imagine, eventually kind of fade away or have to kind of start a family. And it's the same problem that any woman has keeping a career like that going. It's not easy.
And obviously there's an argument. She'd been around at that point 9 years. She was transitioning to pop, but even though she had some initial success, that's a tough thing to pull off.
Yeah.
Obviously there's an argument that as your business changes, it was really about timing, because she was only gone for like 4 years between albums when this went down. And then I also, though, and this is an interesting thing, I kind of feel like some of the culture was mad at her because the women also get blamed in nearly every case of divorce in and around country music in that culture and in the South. So her own divorce and then Garth Brooks's divorce, I can't help but feel like a lot of her fandom was like, she's a homewrecker. She wrecked two homes.
Yeah, well, you know what? She very successfully pivoted, just in case y'all don't know, at one point into recipes, baby. I love, she's one of my go-to recipe people on the internet, son. I got a sweet potato pie, pecan pie, all that good shit. She's been burning it up on the recipe front for a while now, so she can cook too now. I mean, but literally, it's a part of her, career. I'm not.
She got back into the kitchen and stopped singing that fucking devil music, just like Garth told her to.
She won back after being a home wrecker by the way they always win you back, with a good pie. No, I don't know. It may just be a branding thing. She could have a ghost cooker. You know what I mean? Like you have a ghost writer. She could have a ghost cooker for her recipes. I don't know. But Trisha Yearwood recipes are very much a thing. And I use them myself from time to time, and I find them to be quite well done.
Well, I don't know. Satisfying. I don't know what all was involved in it, but I can't help but feel like this is around the same time of the rise of Tim McGraw, who, your name, Indian Outlaw, had that hit, and Faith Hill, who had a lot of successful duets together, and they kind of became the first lady and first man of country music as a couple.
Yeah.
Trisha Yearwood and Garth Brooks absolutely could have and should have given them a run for their money, if not just obliterated them in that world had they wanted to. The only two things I could think of that would prevent that from happening is one or both of them didn't want to do it. Maybe Trisha Yearwood was like, I've done it. I did Con Air. I had the country hits. I'm going to raise some kids now and follow my husband around. Or Garth had too big of an ego.
Drew, goddamn it. Put some respect on her cooking name.
Yes. She wanted to have kids and cook. Or the publicists, the agents, the managers were like, look, you guys are not beloved right now because this culture, Tim and Faith were single when they got together. They were on tour together. We have this little package story of like, oh, they fell in love when she was opening for him, and it's all sweet. Whereas you guys have that same story, but you're married during it. We can't pull it off.
Yeah, bad PR.
They're still together, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Garth and Trisha. Yeah.
Yeah. What all that happened was they, did it right. They weren't happy, and now they are.
Right.
And it would be different if he left her for like a model. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying Trisha Yearwood's not beautiful. She is, but it's like you have something in common with her. You have a similar life.
Also, and I don't know, I mean, it may have had something to do with it. I never really thought about all of that much, but it is interesting, all that home wrecker theory type stuff. But I feel like she probably, like Tushar was saying earlier, I mean, dude, what 90s country stars, how many of them transitioned well into the aughts and beyond and kept going? Like Brad Paisley probably started in the late 90s, I guess. But he was just getting started then, and then he kept that going into the aughts. And some of them stayed around in like the beginning part. But usually what happens with musicians in all genres, I feel like, are they come out, they blow up, they hit for a few years, right? They've got their era, and then Trisha Yearwood could still sell out all over the place and tour and fucking smash, and maybe she does, I don't know. But, they stop being relevant on the charts and everything in the moment, and that kind of just happens almost inevitably to all of them, with very few exceptions in any genre you name, I feel like. So it could have just been that too,
like she saw that coming and didn't want to go through it, because what I'm pointing out is there was like a 4.5 year gap between albums where she had just had crossover success, and then she just kind of went to have kids. And so you're completely right. Everything you said is true. But if that was it, it was just an internal motivation on her mind saying, I'm not going to go through that. This is over.
Yeah.
I had a question about and this has been mentioned a few times, but the crossover appeal, and also because of this podcast, I've been listening to more country music. Like I've been going on Spotify and be like, what is the new version of this stuff? And a lot of it is very, very, very poppy.
Yeah,
and
dude.
So what can you guys talk about how that happened? Did it happen with artists like Trisha Yearwood, or because I found it.
How much time you got?
So what I've learned,
honestly, about 15 minutes.
We rant and rave on this subject all the time. Like on the wellRED podcast, it gets brought up. Seems like once a month or so, we just start bitching about the state of radio country music. But Drew, go ahead. Whatever you.
Well, what I was going to say is what we've learned, or what I've learned from mostly Cocaine and Rhinestones. There's a pretty convincing argument out there. Cocaine and Rhinestones is a podcast helmed by Tyler Mahan Coe, David Allen Coe's son. Tushar, we warned you about David Allen Coe when he pops up on your playlist, what might happen. But
roll tide.
But there's a pretty convincing argument that happens pretty much every generation. It's not always pop music. Sometimes it's rock. But like with Garth Brooks, it was rock. It was happening simultaneously with Shania Twain going pop. Where he was playing a lot more electric guitar and he was doing arena style, while Shania was doing pop style music for women. But the point is, there's an argument pretty convincingly that every generation of country music is about 5 to 10 years behind pop. So when you're 30, the country music sounds like pop when you were 20, and you're like, fuck this, I hate this. But if you're 10, that's what country music is. And pop is so different because it's Billie Eilish now, that if you're 10 right now, country doesn't sound like pop because it doesn't sound at all like Billie Eilish. So there's a pretty convincing argument out there that country music, the industry and the mainstream part of it, is about a decade, maybe a little less, behind pop music. And it just takes a little bit from others. There's an equally convincing argument, though, that starting in about 2005, it ramped up more than it ever has. Crossover success, the internet, stuff like that, and then people not from the South listening to it more and more. It was like, we're never going back.
Yeah, it's a move for just broader appeal.
Yes,
you can fill more
and
seats.
Things like alt country could find a space in niche places because of the internet and Spotify, that there's always a pull away from its roots and then a pull back. Well, the pull back to country's roots in like 2008, 2009, those bands never got played on country radio. They just found their own success, their own places. So there was no riding of the ship. Not that there ever was truly a riding of the ship, but the genre itself is never going to, pull back.
Yeah. Tushar, one of the great ongoing debates amongst me and my friends, and me and Corey and Drew have talked about it a whole bunch too, is like how much of our love for 90s country specifically is just rooted in nostalgia because of how much we hate new radio country. But this was the radio country of its day. And it's like, the question is, if we had been adults already in the 90s, would we have thought all of this was complete garbage? Because I'll tell you, my dad did. And my dad loved, Waylon and Willie and all them, Johnny Cash and Merle and all those guys. But he hated all this shit at the time. So but I love I understand that dynamic, but it's hard for anybody to convince me that if you listen to Clint Black and then listen to that dude that sings Fancy Like or whatever, that Clint Black isn't way more country than that shit is. You know what I mean? I don't think it's an apples to apples comparison, or that it's just
an apples to Applebee's comparison.
Yes. Yeah. You'll never convince me that the shit that was pop country in the 90s wasn't infinitely more country than what's pop country today. Because you got Marshmello on the country charts now. the DJ, the Sentient Confectionery DJ. He had a #1 country hit.
He goes by Marshmallow until he's in a country song, and then he's Marshmallow.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, and it's like sort of what Drew was saying, they always take parts of like radio country reflects the other genres that are popular at the time, like i.e. EDM right now. So that's why you got like Marshmallow and shit. And also rap, which Fancy Like sounds to me like a really, really terrible rap song with like country music tropes in it. You know what I mean? Even in the video, he does rap hands and stuff the whole time. So it's like,
he's got on Timberlands too.
Yeah, but I hate it, dude. I cannot stand it. The new shit. It's like, I take it almost personally how much I hate it. Because there's like people out here, people in California, or people that don't fuck with country at all. If they ask, do you like country music? I always want to be like, yes, I fucking love country music, but I guarantee you that what you are thinking of in your head is not what I mean when I say that. And I hate that shit, and it's like,
is it
what people think country music is, and people who like country music is why I get upset about it, because of how terrible I think it is.
How much of it is, how music comes in cycles and it'll kind of come back, and is that a thing that happens in country music, or this is something that the ship is headed that direction?
My opinion is that that is absolutely a thing that has happened, and it happened a bunch, but I don't think it'll happen now, because the things that would pull it back, the Sturgill Simpsons of the world, the Margot Prices of the world, those folks found their own audiences, became superstars in their own right, won Grammys, some of them, without having to go through that industry. The industry has almost no onus to course correct at this point. It's happening a little bit. You see it with Chris Stapleton. You see it with some of the younger artists that are coming up on country now. And I do think it will happen, but I don't think it's going to be as, strong of a pullback as it was in the past, personally.
Yeah. There's go ahead.
I wanted to bring up a thing, Tushar, a cultural thing, going back to this song, She's in Love with the Boy. I think we've mentioned on here on the wellRED podcast at least a couple of times about the whole like arranged marriages thing.
Mm-hmm.
How would this whole deal, what's happening in this song, how would this like play out in an Indian household?
This would be more of the
mom's in love with the boy.
It would be something like that. It would be like, let's take it from the perspective of, from basically the father being like, this boy is right for you, and the girl being like, I don't want to, and I love it. I love another guy.
Yeah.
Right. Like I love someone else. So it would be so much more complicated, because the argument wouldn't be, hey, don't date this piece of shit. He's not worth it. He's not, he doesn't have his life together, versus like, it would go one step beyond to be like, not only can you not marry this guy,
yeah,
I have a guy that we made a deal with his father to kind of have a business thing. And so that's like the old school version of it. But now I think modern day India, and as people are migrating to the cities and becoming more, kind of liberal, I guess, this would be the same song. It'd be like,
yeah,
Dad, I love this guy. And he's not even in the realm of arranging a marriage. He's just like, no, this guy's a piece of shit. Yeah, so I think fundamentally it would be the same. But yeah, the idea of going to find your own, the parents' conversation would go beyond, hey, no, you were just like this, so just give him a chance. It'd be like, no, this guy's not the right cast. This guy's not the right whatever. He's not from the right family. He's a, whatever. Those things would come into the song and really fuck it up and make it not fun.
Yeah. Well, could there be a running away? You know what I mean? Like,
that of course, that's the fundamental. Like, once we do an Indian song, I'll pick one where that's the kind of the theme.
Oh, I was about to say it's time.
I think it's time. Yeah.
It's next week is that still like Shot the Podcast?
For sure.
Is that trope of eloping and whatnot, is that still like romantic in the context of that whole scenario? Or it's like, and also, does that just ruin your family life when you do that? Like, is it just over, or is it a thing you can get past?
I think it's I mean, I have so many examples from my own family where like my cousin married a girl and the guy, the girl's father didn't want that to happen, and he was the right cast, but he was not as educated as their family. Like they're lawyers from like a very lawyerish thing, and they ended up pushing through, having a kid, getting married. Now they're divorced, and the kid lives with the girl at the father's house. So these things are playing out everywhere, but I think that idea of he can't get married, or this, you shouldn't marry this person because of where they are in life. I think that is amplified by what is supposed to happen, right?
Yeah.
If this song is like, no, you got to marry this boy, he's our family friend, whatever, that would be like the updated version of that in terms of like Indian culture.
So
In the old school version where they do that, what age are we talking about? Like when the
Oh man,
arrangement
I
was
had
made.
one of my family friends, like my mom was early 20s, like 23, 24, that age. But I have a family friend that I grew up with here, like went to school with him. His mom got married at like 13. They got married, and then he came back 3-4 years later and took her to America, and she was like 17 in America, like married for 3 years, just like what the fuck.
Okay.
So like it worked out. They're still together. I mean, they're kind of weird and kind of crazy, but like it's a very kind of, it's you have to understand, like getting your son or daughter married is part of the duty of the parents. Not like in this culture where it's like, go find them and we'll shit on them or love them or whatever. It's like, it's the family's responsibility to use that network, their family members in other cities. Just like there's usually like formal group gatherings of these people, depending on their caste or language or whatever they're basing it on. So they just want to keep things consistent. But things have changed now. It's like I think it's the divorce rate in India is starting to go up. Like this idea of finding your own love is starting to go up. Dating apps are part of the whole thing.
But is there an argument that the divorce rate's going up because people aren't listening? Because like you just said, your friend had that scenario. I mean, look, it sounds like dad's right in
These
every
goddamn
culture.
kids
That's
today
right.
out here trying to marry people they love and shit instead of who we say, and then look what happens.
Look what happened. Now I'm raising their goddamn kid.
But dude, people didn't used to. I don't know the statistics about American divorce, but dude, a couple generations back, you just didn't get divorced. You know what I mean?
You just sat with it.
You just dealt with it. You cheat on each other or whatever, sure. But
man, those people
divorce
were so
just
up.
wasn't
Depression
a thing.
was an economic term. Like it had nothing to do with how you felt. It was like, no, there's no food.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't surprise if it sort of mirrored the rise over here.
The other element of this is like, as more people in India are going to the cities and kind of living on their own, this whole family arranged marriage setup was predicated on the joint family. So you're living with your grandparents, and your grandparents have your father, and there's 3 brothers living in the house. And so when you have a girl, your job is to get her married into a family, and then she leaves the house, enters that other joint family. When you have a son, it's the vice versa. You're adding someone to your family. So it's not just a simply like, I want to dictate who you get married to. It's like, this bitch, all due respect, is going to live in our family. So she better be qualified to live with us. She better understand the language. She better like the food. You can't have a complete weird foreign person who doesn't understand any of those things, because it'll disrupt the flow of the business of the family.
How do white girls play, Tushar?
Oh, they don't.
yeah,
they ain't part of this.
No, they don't factor in. All right.
But I have seen, like, in this, like, 3 of my buddies here in Alabama, like, they're married to white girls. Like, we're here and it happens and it works out.
Does she live with his family though, or is it
no? This is American style. You live on your own, and she has a job, and they have like, it's a different, more modern way. But a lot of that is like, women are historically, they're not earning money. Like my parents' generation, like very few women went into the workforce. So their job was to go into the other family and start cranking out kids and all the work that happens with the house. Like the older grandmother and the mother is starting to get old. You're next in line to head the household.
I just
So it's
remember
just-
when we got really, really, really stoned and your sweet mama made us food and it was so good. And then I got completely choked on a clove and like about died. And I think it worried her like her food was bad. I was just like, I'm just choking on a clove and I'm stoned. I'm so sorry.
My favorite part of that meal was when Cho didn't want to finish his plate, and Trey was like, "You gonna finish that goddamn plate?" Just by a look, you didn't even say anything. You're like, "You're finishing that goddamn food," and Cho's like, "Oh," sweating.
Yeah, clean your plate.
All right. Well, we will talk
You got
more
no
about
manners?
that. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
We will talk more about that next week on what's the word? We talked about it. What's the Indian Bubba?
But yeah,
Baya Shot the Podcast.
Bhaya's brother,
Yeah.
kind of the same. Yeah, Bhaya shot. Oh yeah, I'll bring an Indian song. I'll figure it out which one to listen to. I'll send it to you guys ahead of time.
I'm excited.
Yeah, it's for me.
I'll
And
pick
Joe will be
the most country Indian song I can think of.
back. I can't
Cannot wait
this
to see what that
produces.
means in his
Yeah.
mind.
I know. Song about a
And
guy
in this
fucking
one,
a
the
cow
woman
or
died.
something. Yeah.
All right.
All right, we got to rate it.
Oh yeah, that's good call. We've forgotten that exactly once. You didn't
Well,
forget
from-
that time because you left early and did it.
I mean, I already said this is up there for me in the entire catalog of 90s country, so I feel like I have to give it 3 out of 3 Earnhardts.
I'm gonna give it 2.75.
All right.
Only because it was so simple that it almost was like borderline annoying. Like, it's the only thing I'd take away from it, because like, you love the dude and that's it. That's beautiful. But you know, I need some more drama or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with 2.45. I think that turn is magnificent. I think that it's borderline masterful. But the rest of the song, I do think it's simple. Like Tushar said, I think it's very well done. But I don't even think it's Trisha Yearwood's best song from the 90s personally. So that might be my own personal bias coming in there.
What is?
The one we were just talking about, now I've forgotten the name of it, the crossover hit.
How Do I Live?
Yeah, How Do I Live? I think that How Do I Live is just because
I
you also
love
got
that
to,
song.
once you put it in the context of time, like so many pop songs and country songs tried to do whatever that is, that slowed down, show off her voice and how much range she has. And it's like kind of cheesy and cliche now, but like outside of Whitney Houston, wasn't nobody doing that until she did it.
Yeah, it's a belter now. She belts it out.
Who's
Yeah.
before we go? What is the rap equivalent? Is this more of an R&B kind of?
This is an R&B for sure.
That
this is
boy
absolutely an
is mine. Something.
Yeah, it's not bad.
That ain't bad.
Although
Yeah.
that song is about them arguing over a boy, right?
That's right.
I'm trying to think of. Let's see. It's like.
Or like a Whitney Houston type of.
Yeah, I think Whitney Houston is definitely getting in the right vein.
Throw it in the comments, people.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sure there's something, but I can't think of anything right now.
I'm not as up on my R&B as I am my rap. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, I texted Joe, but to get his rating, but he hadn't texted back. So we'll go. All right, fellas.
All right, love y'all.
Love
See
you.
you.
Bye.
All right, later.
Bubba Shot the Podcast, and that's right, a show about country at its height. Don't expect no shit from 2005. Bubba Shot the Podcast.